London, 1817. The city wakes beneath a haze of coal smoke and mist, where carriage wheels clatter like impatient hearts over cobblestones slick with dawn. The Thames carries whispers of empire, of trade, scandal, and secret letters passed in candlelight. Beneath that shifting sky, Lady Eleanor Whitcomb stares through the frost-filmed window of her carriage, her gloved hands folded tightly in her lap. She is 19, the youngest daughter of a house once admired, now quietly bankrupt. Her mother's words echo within her mind, "You were born to restore what your father squandered. Smile, Eleanor. Charm is the only dowry we have left." The carriage halts before the marble steps of the Whitcomb townhouse in Grosvenor Square, a place purchased with borrowed money and trembling hope. Inside, the air smells of lavender and desperation. Lady Margaret Whitcomb, her beauty preserved by powder and willpower, inspects her daughter as if she were a jewel to be auctioned. "Tonight," she says, adjusting Eleanor's pearl necklace, "the Duke of Ashbourne will attend. You will dance with him, and you will not let your thoughts wander to poetry or principle. This is not a fairy tale, it is survival." Eleanor lowers her eyes, though her heart resists. Since childhood, she has felt the invisible hands of society arranging her destiny, trimming away all that did not fit its pattern. She has read of revolutions, of women in France who dared to choose their own paths. But here in England, where lineage was law and rumor, its enforcer, freedom was a fantasy whispered only between the pages of books. She wants love, but love, in her mother's world, is a ruinous indulgence. As evening descends, London's mansions awaken in glittering succession. Candles flare behind windows like stars in formation. The ball at Devonshire House draws the titled and the ambitious alike, officers in immaculate dress uniform, debutantes trembling beneath diamond tiaras, widows wrapped in silk and calculation. The orchestra tunes to the hum of conversation, each note another step in a dance of alliances. Eleanor arrives with the calm of one who has practiced composure all her life, yet her stomach knots at the thought of the eyes that will measure her worth. From the marble staircase, she surveys the hall. The chandeliers cast prisms of light over the crowd, and every movement glitters, fans fluttering, laughter breaking like glass. Then, amidst the sea of color, she notices him. The Duke of Ashbourne stands near the far wall, his presence drawing attention without effort. He is older than most, perhaps 32, with the carriage of a man accustomed to command. His black hair bears the faint silver of fatigue. His posture, the stiffness of a soldier who cannot unlearn discipline. The scars along his right temple, faint but deliberate, speak of battlefields rather than ballrooms. Rumor says he returned from Waterloo with a chest full of medals and a heart sealed by grief. No one knows why he has not yet taken a wife. Some claim he mourns a lost love, others that he serves a higher loyalty, one that keeps him distant from affection. Whatever the truth, he moves through the room as though it belongs to him, yet interests him little. Their meeting happens not by design but by the orchestration of chance, the sort of coincidence society mistakes for fate. As the dance begins, a gentleman missteps and retreats, leaving Eleanor momentarily without a partner. The Duke's gaze, drawn by her stillness, meets hers across the ballroom. It is not the gaze of a man entranced by beauty, but of one who sees something unexpected, recognition, perhaps, or curiosity uninvited. He crosses the floor with measured grace and bows. "May I?" She hesitates, then accepts. Their hands meet, hers cool, his steady. The music swells, and they move together, not in practiced perfection but in a strange harmony. He leads with precision, and she follows with instinct. Neither speaks, yet each studies the other. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, search hers for weakness and find defiance instead. When the dance ends, he escorts her to the edge of the floor. "You are not fond of these gatherings," he observes, his voice low, neither compliment nor question. "I find them instructive," she replies. Every smile reveals a secret motive. A faint curve touches his lips. "Then you see the world as it is." "Few do." And before she can reply, he inclines his head and disappears into the crowd, leaving behind the faint scent of sandalwood and gunpowder, strange, unsettling, unforgettable. All evening, Eleanor feels the echo of that encounter. The Duke does not approach again, yet she senses his awareness in the periphery, as if he watches not her beauty but her thoughts. By midnight, whispers circulate. Ashbourne danced once, only once, and with her. Lady Margaret's eyes gleam with triumph disguised as decorum. "Do not look surprised, child," she murmurs. "Fate favors those who prepare its path." Later, in the carriage ride home, Eleanor sits in silence. The city slips by, lamp posts reflected in puddles like broken constellations. She cannot banish the image of the Duke's face, the restrained sorrow in his expression, the tension beneath his courtesy. Something about him defies the easy arrogance of other men she has met. He carries the weight of unfinished duty. She wonders if his dance with her was mere politeness or something deliberate, a move in a game she does not yet understand. The next morning, London awakes to gossip. By breakfast, every drawing-room hums with the same refrain. The Duke of Ashbourne has declared his interest in Lady Eleanor Whitcomb. It seems impossible. They shared but one dance, no letters, no courtship. Yet the announcement comes through the official channels of society, a quiet word to the editors, a confirmation from his household. Eleanor reads it in the morning paper, her hand trembling slightly over her teacup. Her mother bursts into the room, flushed with excitement. "Do you see, Eleanor? A Whitcomb Duchess. You will save us all." She speaks as if the match is already sealed. Eleanor listens, but her thoughts drift elsewhere, to the Duke's measured tone, his searching eyes. Why her, when he could have any heiress in London? What does he see beyond her family's debts and fading name? That evening, as twilight gathers over Grosvenor Square, a sealed letter arrives. The handwriting is firm, decisive. "My lady," it begins, "I shall call upon you tomorrow at noon. There are matters that cannot wait." The signature, Ashbourne, is a single line drawn like a blade. Eleanor holds the paper to her chest, torn between relief and dread. She senses that this summons is not the beginning of romance, but of something deeper, something bound to duty, perhaps danger. For the first time in her life, she feels the quiet tremor of destiny approaching, not the one her mother designed, but the kind that alters the course of everything it touches. Outside, the fog rolls in from the river, wrapping the city in secrecy. Somewhere in that gray distance, the Duke prepares to visit the woman he chose after a single dance. The bells of St. Paul's toll the hour, solemn and slow, as if London itself holds its breath. And in the soft lamplight of her room, Lady Eleanor Whitcomb closes her eyes, unaware that by accepting his hand on that ballroom floor, she has already stepped into a far more dangerous waltz than any she will ever dance again. The Duke arrived the next day as promised, punctual to the minute, his carriage gliding to a halt before the Whitcomb townhouse with a quiet authority that made passers-by turn their heads. Inside, Eleanor waited in the drawing-room, her mother flitting about like a general preparing for battle. When Ashbourne entered, the room seemed to contract around him. His presence commanded stillness, the kind earned not from rank alone but from survival. His eyes, clear and unreadable, took in the gilt mirrors, the anxious mother, and finally, the young woman seated by the window. He bowed with military precision. "Lady Whitcomb. Lady Eleanor." Lady Margaret gestured to the tea service, her voice trembling with rehearsed politeness. "Your Grace, it is an honor." The Duke declined tea. "I will not waste your time, my lady. I have come with intent." His gaze shifted to Eleanor. "I wish to offer my hand in marriage." The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Eleanor, too startled to speak, glanced at her mother, who could barely contain her triumph. "Your Grace, we are honored beyond measure," Lady Margaret said, already envisioning the social resurrection this union would bring. But Eleanor, regaining composure, met his eyes. "You scarcely know me." He studied her for a moment, as though measuring the honesty in her defiance. "I know what I require, Lady Eleanor, and I believe you possess it." "What is that?" "Discretion, strength, a clear mind." His tone made no room for flirtation. "In my world, such qualities are rarer than beauty." It was not the proposal of a suitor in love, but the contract of a man who weighed every decision like strategy. Yet something within Eleanor, curiosity, perhaps pride, kept her from refusing. He did not flatter her, nor offer the gilded promises of court poets. Instead, he offered gravity, as if their fates already shared a thread neither could sever. The engagement was announced that evening. London's salons erupted in speculation. Why such haste? Why a girl of modest means? Some whispered that the Duke sought redemption. Others claimed he owed her father a forgotten debt. The truth was simpler and far more dangerous, though only the Duke knew it. The wedding took place within a fortnight, at St. George's in Hanover Square. The day was cool and pale, the church perfumed with roses. Eleanor stood before the altar in ivory silk, her veil trembling as the Duke spoke his vows in that steady, unreadable voice. When he lifted the veil to kiss her, the touch was brief, formal, but not unkind. It was a union of necessity, sealed beneath God's gaze and society's scrutiny. They left London that evening for Ashbourne Manor in Derbyshire. As the carriage rattled northward, Eleanor watched the city fade into mist, the weight of her new title pressing against her ribs. Duchess. A word that once shimmered with promise now felt heavy with expectation. Ashbourne Manor appeared at dusk, a vast stone fortress rising from a sweep of moorland, its windows glowing like watchful eyes. The house was magnificent but cold, its corridors echoing with restrained grandeur. Servants bowed silently as they passed, their expressions cautious, almost wary. Eleanor sensed at once that affection was not often given here. Everything moved according to unspoken rules. That night, she dined alone. The Duke had been called to his study, his valet explained, for urgent correspondence. She ate in silence beneath a chandelier that flickered in protest against the draught. When she later passed the study door, she heard the faint crackle of fire and the soft scratch of a quill. A voice. His murmured names she did not recognize. She paused, then moved on, unwilling to begin her marriage with suspicion. Yet the unease stayed with her. Days became weeks. Their marriage, though civil, existed within a careful distance. The Duke treated her with courtesy but withheld warmth. He spent long hours in the study or away on estate matters, returning at night with a weariness that spoke of more than paperwork. Eleanor filled the emptiness with reading, walks through the mist-laden gardens, and the company of a few sympathetic servants. One evening, during a storm, a sealed envelope slipped from a stack of ledgers in the library. Its seal bore a crest unfamiliar to her, a coiled serpent surrounding a crown. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Inside, a coded letter. The phrases were clipped, the handwriting terse. Meeting delayed. Intelligence compromised. Continue observation under cover of domestic union. Her blood ran cold. Domestic union. She read the line again, realizing with dawning horror that it could refer to her marriage. The Duke, her husband, was involved in something beyond the ordinary affairs of a nobleman. She replaced the letter exactly where she found it, her hands trembling. That night, when he entered their chamber, his expression unreadable as ever, she studied him anew, the faint scars, the steady composure, the quick flicker of thought behind his eyes. "You are restless," he said, unbuttoning his cuffs. "I am learning what it means to be a wife." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Then we are both learning." For days she carried the secret like a stone. Her imagination offered theories. Espionage, blackmail, perhaps even treason. Yet when he spoke to her, his gentleness disarmed suspicion. He discussed poetry over breakfast, asked after her comfort, even joined her on walks across the grounds. Still, she could not shake the sense that he moved through his own invisible war. One night, she followed him. The hour was past midnight, rain whispering against the windows. He descended to the east wing, where few servants ventured. Through a half-open door, she saw him kneeling beside a chest, drawing out documents marked with the royal crest. Another man stood beside him, a stranger in a dark coat. Their voices were low but urgent. "The regent must not suspect," the stranger said. "He already suspects too much," the Duke replied. "One more mistake and it will be my neck, not yours." Eleanor stepped back before they could see her, heart pounding. She did not sleep that night. The next morning, she confronted him, not with accusation, but with quiet resolve. "You speak in your sleep," she said softly over breakfast. "Names. Secrets. Are you in danger, Sebastian?" He looked up sharply, caught off guard by the use of his name. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered through his composure. "Danger is a matter of perspective, my lady," he said finally. "Some call it duty. And do you endanger me in fulfilling it?" He paused. "Never by choice." The answer frightened her more than silence would have. She understood then that whatever bound them was larger than marriage. It was entanglement. She wanted to hate him, but found instead a strange ache of compassion. Whatever mission haunted him had stripped away parts of his soul long before she arrived. Their fragile intimacy deepened in the quiet between deceptions. He began to share fragments, stories of Waterloo, of soldiers left nameless, of loyalty that demanded lies. One evening, as firelight painted the room in amber, he said, "There are truths that can destroy a nation, Eleanor, and others that can save it, but only if they remain hidden." She met his gaze steadily. "And which am I meant to be? Truth or concealment?" He hesitated. "Perhaps both." From that moment, understanding replaced illusion. She was not merely his wife but his alibi, his protection from scrutiny. Her public grace shielded his private operations. Yet beneath the arrangement, emotion stirred, mutual respect, a longing neither dared name. When a messenger arrived one stormy night, bearing another sealed letter, Eleanor saw fear cross his face for the first time. He locked the door behind him, but before disappearing into the study, he turned to her and said quietly, "Whatever you hear tonight, trust that I have reasons. I would not have chosen you if I did not." His footsteps faded into the hall, leaving her alone before the fire, her pulse echoing the storm outside. She no longer knew whether she was wife or accomplice, pawn or partner. But she knew one thing with piercing certainty: their story, whatever its end, had already passed the point of return. The night the truth broke open began with silence, the kind that seems to wait for disaster. The rain had ceased, but thunder grumbled faintly over the Derbyshire hills. Eleanor stood before the fire in her chamber, her mind restless. The Duke had not returned since the messenger's arrival. Hours passed, the candles burned low, and unease grew into dread. She had learned enough to sense when danger drew near. The way servants whispered, the hurried steps outside the study, the coded letters that vanished as quickly as they appeared. When the clock struck midnight, she left her room and followed the faint glow seeping from beneath the study door. Through the crack, she saw her husband bent over his desk, papers strewn before him like a battlefield. A pistol lay beside an open map. Another man stood across from him, the same stranger she had glimpsed once before. His voice carried low but urgent. "We cannot hold this any longer. They suspect us both. The Regent's men are already moving." The Duke's tone was measured, though steel laced every word. "Then we end it tonight. The names must be secured before dawn. If they fall into the wrong hands, the monarchy collapses." The man hesitated. "And your wife?" Eleanor froze. "She knows little," Sebastian replied. "And what she knows, she will keep. She has more courage than half the Crown's council." Before she could retreat, the floorboard creaked beneath her foot. Both men turned sharply. The Duke's eyes met hers through the narrow opening. Gray, startled, resigned. "Eleanor," he said quietly, not in anger but inevitability. "Come in." She entered, her nightgown brushed with candlelight. "I could not sleep," she said, her voice barely steady. "Tell me what you are hiding before someone else does." The other man stepped forward, but the Duke lifted a hand to silence him. "Leave us, Harrington." When they were alone, he motioned her to sit. "You once asked if I would endanger you," he said. "I told you never by choice. That remains true. Then tell me the choice you've made tonight." He leaned back, exhaustion written in the set of his shoulders. "There is a faction among the nobility, men who seek to dethrone the regent under the guise of reform. They have infiltrated Parliament, the army, even the royal household. I was placed among them to gather evidence, to prevent bloodshed. It was meant to end quietly. And now someone has betrayed us. I do not know who." He exhaled. "I married you because a wife grants the illusion of stability. They would not suspect a man newly wed to a young, untainted duchess. You were meant to be my protection. His eyes softened. I did not foresee that you would become my reason. Eleanor felt the world tilt, the revelation slicing through every pretense of normalcy. Yet beneath the shock came understanding. Every distance, every guarded gesture, every flicker of warmth restrained, it all made sense now. You used our marriage to hide from treason, she whispered. And yet you speak of reason as though love absolves deception. I did not seek to deceive you, he said quietly. But the game I play spares no one. I thought I could shield you from it. Before she could reply, a distant clatter echoed through the corridor, metal striking marble. The Duke's expression sharpened. They're here. He crossed the room, extinguishing the lamp. Go to your chamber, bolt the door, and do not open it for anyone but me. But she did not move. If they mean to harm you, I will not hide. He caught her wrist, his touch firm, desperate. This is not gallantry. It is war in silence. Promise me. Her answer was interrupted by the crash of the front doors below and the muffled shouts of men. The study windows trembled. Without another word, he opened a hidden panel behind the bookshelf, revealing a narrow passage leading to the servants' quarters. Go, he ordered. She obeyed, half out of fear, half out of instinct. The passage smelled of dust and old stone. She could hear boots striking the floors above, voices demanding, "Where is the Duke?" "In the name of the crown." Then came another sound, familiar, sharp, the Duke's voice, calm and commanding even under siege. Eleanor reached the corridor that overlooked the main hall. From the shadows, she saw armed men in plain dress flooding the marble foyer, their coats marked subtly with the royal insignia. Ashbourne stood at the base of the staircase, unarmed but unyielding. "You have no authority here," he said. "The regent commands your arrest for high treason," the leader declared, holding a paper sealed with wax. "Surrender yourself." Eleanor's breath caught. She understood in that instant that the betrayal had come from within his own circle, and that if she stayed silent, his name and her own would be destroyed before sunrise. She descended the steps before reason could stop her. "You accuse my husband of treason?" Her voice rang through the hall. "Then you accuse the crown's most loyal servant. He has risked everything to protect what you claim to defend." The men hesitated. None expected to see the Duchess herself descend like judgment. The Duke turned toward her, eyes wide with disbelief. "Eleanor, what are you doing?" "Finishing what you began," she said. "If loyalty is treason, then let them name us both." Her defiance bought them only moments. The officer stepped forward, his expression hardened. "The evidence will speak for itself, madam." Eleanor's gaze flicked to the documents clutched in his hand, the same papers the Duke had tried to secure earlier. She moved before thought intervened, snatching the sheaf and flinging it into the fire. Flames devoured the parchment instantly, smoke curling toward the ceiling like a benediction. Chaos erupted. Two soldiers lunged forward. One seized her arm, the other drew his weapon. The Duke struck first, disarming the man with practiced precision. In the struggle, a shot rang out. Eleanor gasped as the Duke staggered, crimson blooming across his shoulder. The sound froze the room. He did not fall. Instead, he turned to her, his face pale but steady. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "You'd have done the same," she replied, tears catching in her throat. The officer, shaken by the scene, gestured for retreat. "We'll return with warrants," he muttered, leading his men toward the doors. Within minutes, only silence remained, broken by the hiss of dying embers. Eleanor rushed to the Duke's side. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing," he lied. "A reminder that every choice has its price." He sank into a chair, pressing a hand to the wound. She tore a strip from her gown to bind it, her hands trembling. When dawn crept through the shattered windows, the storm had passed. Outside, riders departed toward London with tales that would take days to twist into scandal. For now they had time, fragile, fleeting. As she cleaned the blood from his hand, he studied her with an expression she had never seen before, unguarded, human. "You saved me," he said softly. And in doing so, you've damned yourself to my secrets. I would rather share your danger than another man's safety, she replied. He smiled faintly, weary but alive. You have the soul of a soldier, Eleanor. And you, she said, the heart of a poet who hides behind duty. They said nothing more. The fire crackled, the world outside stirring into another uncertain morning. In that quiet, their marriage, once a contract of convenience, became something far deeper, bound not by vows but by survival and trust. Weeks later, the regent's investigation vanished from record, silenced by those who understood the price of revelation. The Duke relinquished his covert work, retreating from politics into the quiet life of his Derbyshire estate. In society's eyes, they were merely another noble couple, withdrawn from public view. But those who passed through Ashbourne's gates spoke of the Duchess who walked the gardens at dawn beside her husband, their hands intertwined, as though nothing in the world could separate them again. Years would fade, yet whispers endured of the scandal that never reached the papers. And though history would forget their names, the truth remained between them, that love, born in deception, had grown into something pure enough to defy every rule that created it. On a gray spring morning, Eleanor opened the Duke's old journal, its pages scarred with ink and secrecy. His final entry read simply, "For her, I would choose the danger again." She closed the book and looked out upon the moors, where mist curled like memory. Somewhere behind her, footsteps approached, steady, familiar. She turned, and in that instant, time itself seemed to pause. "Sebastian," she whispered. He smiled, and the years fell away. "My lady," he said softly, "shall we take our walk?" And together they stepped into the morning, the echoes of their peril behind them, the promise of peace ahead. Yet even peace, she knew, carries its own kind of silence, the kind that remembers everything love once dared to save.